Hello guys and welcome back to the Summer Day Studios YouTube channel. In today's video we're going to go back to doing something a little bit more practical again. A lot of you have mentioned in the comments that you want me to go over modeling curved objects more. I've done a couple videos on that, but they were mainly just little sort of explainers with a few little examples, so I thought in today's video let's actually build something. And that something that we're going to build is a part of this plane model that I've shown way too many times, probably too many times at this point, but I think it's a decent example. I'm going to show you how I modeled this tail piece because it still has some complexity to it. It's quite a curved shape in pretty much all axes, but you've got all this nice detail on here, like these circular intersects here and these actually separated parts and these lines. So I'm going to show you how I would go about doing something like this. So it's not the most complicated part in the world, but I think the way that you build this can be applied to essentially any other part on this model, from the nose cone to the engines to the wheels and the fuselage and pretty much everything else that you're most likely going to be modeling, no matter what it is, whether that's a plane, tank, car, gun, anything hard surface. So let's get right into it. I would just like to say that whenever you're modeling something, ideally you're looking at reference. I did this originally with blueprints quite a while ago. I don't have them anymore, unfortunately. So I'm just going to assume that this is part of our blueprint. Just imagine that is. But if you're doing this, blueprints definitely make it easier. You don't have to use them, but I would recommend it. What I like to do when I'm starting off with something like this, if it's a wing, is generally I'll pick a cube. A lot of the things I make start with cubes, but I'll often pick the shape that seems to match the most. You know, if we were going with a nose cone, I'd make a sphere probably, just because it's closer to what it looks like, right? Maybe a cylinder if we were doing some sort of cylindrical pipe-like detail. But a cube, even though this doesn't look anything like a cube anymore, is closest to this. So let's go ahead and just use this as an example for the time being. What I like to do is kind of just really simply block things out. So I've mentioned that a bunch of times in the videos that I've made. I always like to block things out to begin with, just because it's the easiest way to make anything. You start with the simplest shape possible, and literally all I'm doing is, if you imagine this model I made before is part of the blueprints, I'm just getting it to size. I'll probably look at it from the side view just to make sure everything's lining up and is to scale as I like. You know, and I'm not worrying about it overhanging here because obviously it's just a cube and it's not got the detail in it to match, but we're just getting the base proportions in, okay? I'll also make sure that matches the overall thickness as well. So you can see this is quite oval shaped from the top, but we'll make it as thick as the widest part and then we'll scale it down. So I like to think of this like a kind of a block of marble, you know, if you think in a traditional sculptor type sense, where you're making a base shape. You just have a solid block you've cut to size, and then within that you now need to carve out this tail piece. So we're going to start working into that now. So I always like to keep things as simple as possible for as long as possible if you've ever watched any of my other videos. And in that sense, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the multi-cut tool. You can also use the insert edge loop tool if you like. Both of them work. We just need to add a new edge. And I'm going to add one just roughly down the middle where the point of the top of the tail is. And I'm also going to add one a little bit up here as well. Actually, maybe we'll add one in the middle. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to go to vertex selection mode. You can do edge selection as well if you like. We just need to grab those parts of the model. And then I'm going to start pulling some parts in. And you can see I'm doing this from the side view. The main reason being is because I'm trying to match the silhouette. And that's much easier to do when we're looking directly from the side in an orthographic view rather than perspective, because that could just kind of confuse things a little bit. So now already we're getting a little bit closer to the shape that we need. What I then like to do is, once I'm happy with the placement of these cuts that we made, is just go ahead and make another one. And we're not just adding them willy-nilly like this, right, everywhere, because that would just be too much. We want to do this one step at a time, make sure we're doing this nice and even and clean the whole way through so that things stay as clean as possible, basically. And again, you want to keep this simple so that if you do make mistakes, it's really easy to edit. And then maybe we'll add another one in the middle here just to keep things even. So the whole time I'm trying to keep the topology even as well. And that, again, is much easier to do when you don't have a whole lot of vertices to deal with, okay? So already that's getting us a lot of the way there. We've kind of cut out most of the shape. So you can see I'm really like taking this quite slow. I'm not exactly rushing it. That's the way I would encourage you to do this, because otherwise you might get ahead of yourself and you'll make mistakes. So it's better just to take your time with this kind of stuff. Don't worry about doing it fast, you know, especially if you're a beginner. The speed will come later. That's what I was always told when I was learning, and I find that to be true even now, even though I've been doing this for a while. Much better to take your time and do it right than rush through it and mess it up. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this shape. So right now we just have one edge going up the middle, and that's okay because it's giving us this top vertex here, the very top of the tail, which is what we need to match the silhouette from the side, right? But if we look from the top, we also need to match the silhouette from the top, okay? So one thing that you should do when you're modeling shapes in general, even curved shapes like this, which are a bit more complicated, is look at them from multiple angles all the time. Use your perspective views, use your orthographic views from the top, side, front, down as well, and just make sure things are looking right before you move on and start doing more. And also don't be afraid to make backups as well. Like I can just duplicate this, maybe call it like backup, and then just hide it. And we can always come back to that point if we make a mistake. And also I'd encourage you to frequently save, just in case Maya crashes, which it does sometimes. Okay, so I want to match the shape from the top as well. So to do that, I am going to grab a multi-cut tool again, and I'm going to add 2 sets of edges. I'm going to hold down Control and then middle mouse click to add them perfectly in the space between these 2 that we already had, just to give us a few more vertices on the side, because we need those in order to create this nice curved shape. And again, we're still not very high poly. We're only adding it as and when we need it. One thing this has caused though is that we now have some unevenness up here. So what I like to do is I'll handy dandy edit edge flow tool. So I'm going to hold down shift, right click, and then go to edit edge flow. You can also go up to edit mesh and then click on edit edge flow as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and do it on these as well, just to make sure that's maintaining the curvature. And then we'll come back to our side view, and then if need be, we can just adjust these a little bit so that they're still matching the silhouette. Okay, cool. So now we've got a bit more topology in there, we can go ahead and actually start creating this shape. You can notice as well with this tail, it tapers off, right, like a wing. To get that shape, what we're going to do is we're going to come up to deform, and then I'm going to go to lattice. I'm going to reduce the divisions in the T to 2 under the channel box, just so that we have a basic box. Then I'm going to go and select vertex selection mode, select the top vertices, and then literally all I'm going to do is just scale those in until that matches roughly the width of the fin at the top. Okay, and the reason why I'm using the lattice tool instead is because if I were to just do this on its own, you know, if I were just to select these vertices, you can see we can only scale in so many at a time. You know, soft selection just isn't going to do it. It's going to end up like it doesn't quite come in at the angle we want it. If you use a lattice, it just scales everything uniformly, which is what we need for something like this. So I would very, very much encourage you to use lattices if you ever need to change shapes like this, just because it's so much cleaner. And now you see we have this nice smooth angle on either side. Okay, so that's getting us a lot of the way there, but we still need to create this nice kind of oval shape. So let's go ahead and remove that first lattice. You can go up to delete all by type and then history from the edit menu, and that will remove that. Then we're going to go back to deform and we're going to click on lattice again. This time we're going to remove all the divisions in T again, and then we're going to add 1 division in S. And that's because we actually want to be scaling this in from the front and back side, not so much the middle side this time. So we're going to come to the top view, we're going to go to vertex selection mode again, and then we're just going to select the front vertices here, and we're going to scale in until this is roughly kind of matching the thickness at the front, not too crazy. And then we'll do it from the back as well. And the back side is much slimmer, so we'll bring that in quite a lot. And that's taken us most of the way there, but you can see it's not quite thick enough on the bottom. So let's go ahead and just select the bottom 2 vertices of this lattice and just scale those out until the tail kind of fits within that shape. Now, if we go ahead and delete all by type by history to get rid of the lattice again, you can see we now have the makings of our tail shape. It's nice and even. We've got that oval shape. Okay, it's very blocky right now because we don't have too many individual polygons. You might notice some funniness here with the width of things. Don't worry about that. We can just fix that up ourselves. So we'll go ahead and go to vertex selection mode, and then maybe we'll just scale things in a little bit here. Sometimes you do have to do some manual editing from time to time, but because again, we have so few vertices, that is okay. I'm not worried about messing that up too much. The next thing I'm going to do before anything else is I'm just going to select this entire middle edge because you can see it's come way too far over. And then I'm going to do another edit edge flow just to bring that over to the middle and keep that nice and even. This one can probably come over a little bit more as well. But the annoying thing about the edit edge flow tool is if I were to select this edge and then do it now, you can see it kind of messes up the whole proportions of everything. I don't know why Maya does that. It's a bit of a pain. To get around that, sometimes I'll just add a quick extra edge in the front, and then if I do it now, Maya does not mess it up for some reason. And And then once we're happy with the shape of things, we can go ahead and just delete that edge. Okay, so one last thing we have to do before we take this any further is just adjust the shape one more time, because we're going to go over to start subdividing this guy. But what I like to do is press free just to toggle a smooth preview. So we can see this looking very nice, very smooth. That's kind of rounding off some of the edges for us, but it doesn't quite match the thickness of this in a few different axes, right? It's a little bit thicker at the front. And also on the sides. So what we're going to do is we'll do one more lattice, this time spending a little bit more time. I'm going to reduce the divisions in T to 3, and I'm going to add 3 divisions in the S axis as well. So we've got kind of like a cross just through the middle, and that's going to give us a little bit more control. So I'm going to go to vertex selection mode so we can start manipulating this lattice, and then I'm just going to start carefully moving some of these around. You can see some of this needs to come forward, and the way I'm judging this is I can see that part of our model coming through over the top or from underneath our original one. If you're doing it from blueprints, you'll just be able to look from the side and see it that way. I can see that it needs to come out a little bit more here as well. Maybe a little bit more up here too. Slightly on the top. And you can see I'm just doing this very casually, just slowly. We need a lot more thickness on the side, so we can really scale that out quite a bit. We need some more thickness down here too, so we'll scale that out a bit. Scale this back in to adjust. It can be a bit wider up the front here as well. I've gone and just deleted the faces on the bottom as well. You don't have to do that, but generally for something like this, I like to. You can still lattice it with those faces on the bottom, but for me it's just easier to edit without those there. And we can always add those back later if we need to, but oftentimes you don't, because it's just going to stick into the plain fuselage anyway. I'm going to go up to edit, delete by type, and then history again to remove that. And I'm just going to hide my reference for the time being. So once you're 100% happy with that shape, and you need to make sure that you are 100% happy with that shape, we need to go ahead and make this topology a little bit more even. You can see right now these quads are looking a bit more like rectangles, which is not something we want. The main reason being is if we want to add some nice details like these circle aspects and some lines and extra parts coming across here, especially on curved surfaces like this, it's much better to have even quad topology. Okay, it just makes everything easier to work on. It's going to make your life easier, so really make sure you take time to get that correct. So I'm going to take the multi-cut tool, and I'm just going to add in a few edges, and you can see that ends up making rectangles, but in the opposite direction now, that we've got some horizontal rectangles. But I'm not too worried about that because I've only added in 2, and we're just going to go ahead and do edit edge flow a bunch. And that will even those out. So that's looking a lot better. Now that we've done a bunch of edit edge flow, we might need to quickly check that against our reference again. To me, that's looking mostly okay. Okay, I'm happy with that. But if you do need to edit it again, that's okay. Just get your lattice back and make a few more edits before you do anything else. So now that this is nice and even, what I like to do is just duplicate it. Okay, and then call it underscore like low, just to signify it's low poly, and then just like BKP for backup, or you can just write backup, and I'll just hide it. And that's because if we do need to, for whatever reason, go back to a lower poly version of this, then we have that in place, and it's not going to take us loads of time to like rebuild this whole thing. Okay, so now that we're happy with that, I am going to go hold shift, right click, and then click smooth. Now we have a lot more topology. Depending on what we actually need to do to this, we could go ahead and subdivide it again. And it really depends on how much detail you're going to add to this. You can see in my original version, it was kind of a bit more like this. I did not need that many subdivisions, just because the circles I did add here, the curvature is not too extreme. You know, you can see, you know, there is a curve to it, but it's a lot more flat than other parts. It's not like it's at the front here, so we really didn't need that much. And that's one thing to look out for when you are modeling and subdividing, is don't just go crazy and add a million subdivisions like this if you don't need them, right? Because this would just be excessive. Like if you needed to add a bunch of tiny little holes like this all over the model, then sure, maybe you'd need a bit more, but then even this would just be crazy, and it's going to make it so much harder to work with, and it's going to increase your render times. It's going to make it harder to texture as well. So just make sure that's something you're paying attention to when you do go ahead and subdivide things. Okay, and if we need to subdivide later, we always can. You can see this is made up of 2 parts, so I would be 100% okay like with having one part that's got a higher subdivision level than the other. Generally, I like to keep things even, but occasionally that's something you have to do, so I'm not too worried about it. Okay, I'm just going to move this back into place to act as our blueprint, and then I am going to add the first cut, which will be this part here that separates part of the tail. And this might look a little bit tricky because this line is coming straight up and then straight across, whereas the lines on our tail that we just built are not doing that. So it means we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to cut this in half because we don't want to have to work on both sides at the same time. It's just going to make it harder for us, and it's also going to slow us down. This will be much quicker. So go ahead and just go to face selection mode, select all these faces on one side, and then delete it on the other side. So now we have one clean side. So this is something you can do quite a lot when you're modeling things. Just to save yourself some time, just cut it in half. It saves a lot of time instead of having to do it yourself manually. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the edge that's closest to this straight one that's on our blueprint example or model example, and to me that is this one. Okay, and then I am going to select that whole edge, select the scale tool, hold down Control and Shift to enable sliding. You can also do that from the modeling toolkit as well. If you go to Transform Constraint, turn on Edge Slide, that would just stay on if you don't want to have to hold down the hotkey. And I'm just going to flatten it out in the x-axis, and that's going to make it nice and flat. We do need to make sure it flattens out a little bit more, and then we're just going to move it across gently. This takes a bit of trial and error sometimes. Okay, now we've got mostly a straight line. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this line, and we'll make this straight as well. And we'll just flatten it out. Okay, and then we'll just say that's where our curve is going to be. And you can see that's kind of messed up the topology a little bit, but again, I'm not too worried. We don't have too much here. We can fix this up. If I go ahead and smooth this, you can see there really is not too much in the way of bumpiness. There's a little bit here, but that will go away when we cut this apart. That's because we have a higher polygon density. So whenever you're working on curved surfaces like this, you generally need a higher poly count, because if you don't, it's just going to create problems. If we had like half the polygons of this would just be much harder to do. What I'm now going to do then is come to face select mode, select all of these faces that we want to be part of the separate panel, and then I'm just going to go up to edit mesh, and we're just going to extract it out to create a separate piece. So now we have two parts of the tail. So whenever you need to split bits up like this, it's generally better to first of all build it as one piece and then split it up afterwards. Because could you imagine having to build up this piece and then build this piece and then making sure that all the edges and vertices line up? You'd end up having a gap. It would just look weird, and it would take so much more time than just modeling as one piece. So it's always better to model it as one piece, and then if it needs separating, you can separate it yourself afterwards. Okay, now what we can do is a little bit of house cleaning, because some of this stuff is looking a little bit wonky. So I'm going to delete this edge here, and then I'm probably going to add an extra edge loop going down the middle, and then connect that up. And then I'll do an edit edge flow a couple times on these edges, and then that's just going to even out the topology for us and bring back those nice even quads for us. Okay, and you can see in very little time at all, we've created two very clean all quad separate parts, and that was really easy to do. Okay, and we do have this little vertex problem here, but we've got this one. We can just use the target world tool and just merge these two together, and bam, problem solved, done. So now we've got those two bits split up into separate pieces. Okay, in fact, actually, I am going to add a few more edge loops here, because I want to be able to add these nice circle details, and that's going to be harder to do if we have less edges. So I do need to add a few more, and that might end up causing some issues with the topology, or with the edge alignment up here. So you can see now that doesn't quite align with the top one. If that kind of thing happens, we can just kind of use soft select and just gently nudge things back into place. And then maybe do a bit of edit edge flow and just make sure things are lining up, you know. And we kind of like to avoid having a difference of topology sometimes, but it's not always the end of the world if there's a subtle difference, especially because these things, you know, nothing is manufactured perfectly, and when you zoom out, you can't really tell the difference anyway. So there's always going to be like slight little differences. Okay, so let's say now we wanted to add a circle detail down here. Depending on the size of the circle, we might need to subdivide this, but let's say you want to do kind of a larger one. This amount of polys would actually be okay. It looks kind of low poly, right? But because the curvature is not that extreme, I'm not really worried about adding a bunch more faces here. So let's say we just want it within here. We're going to select these 4 because we want this to become an 8-sided circle, which will look smooth when we subdivide it again later for render time. So I'm just going to select those, and then I'm going to go ahead and do an extrude. And I'm just going to adjust the offset roughly to the size we want the circle to be, or at least make it smaller. Then I'm going to select the circularize tool from the top of the poly modeling shelf. And this little window will appear, and in these settings I'm going to change the alignment from automatic to surface per vertex. And the reason for that is, if I was to just set this back to automatic, you can see it's actually sitting flat, if you can notice that from this funny angle on the screen. Which is not ideal. That's not what we want. We want this to actually follow the curvature of our wing, our fin here. So I'm going to change the surface per vertex, and then that will allow it to conform to the curvature that we've already built. Then I'm just going to go ahead and twist it so that points up in the direction of everything else. And you can adjust the radial offset if you want it to be bigger or smaller, but I'm happy with that. And then let's say we just want a little inset here. We'll just go ahead and extrude again, and we'll just push that in a bit. Okay, and then one thing I like to do before I do any kind of bevels, right, to hold these edges, especially if we're doing smooth like sub-D modeling, is I just like to crease edges first. I hold down Shift, right click, go to crease, and then drag your middle mouse button, click down to the right to increase the creasing, and you'll see those edges get highlighted in like a thicker edge. Now if I smooth that, you can see it holds that edge for us without actually having to have a bevel. It's just a nice temporary way to keep those held without having to worry about adding bevels, you know, and especially if you need to change things later. And you can see there is no weirdness, there's no like pinching or anything, and it's because this curvature is not that extreme. If we wanted to add one further up here, then yeah, we'd have to subdivide it. Or if we wanted the hole to be a lot smaller, then we'd have to subdivide it. And then maybe we can add another one up here. We'll do the exact same process. We'll just do the offset, circularize, change alignment from automatic to surface per vertex, and twist it so it kind of follows the curvature. And we'll just push that in again. And then I'm just going to do the creasing again, so we have to do a bevel for the time being. Okay, now let's say that we're happy with this side. We can go ahead and duplicate it over to the other side so that we have a complete thing. And then those details will get carried over to the other side because we're just going to mirror it across perfectly. So I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate it, and then I'm going to do a -1 in the scale Z axis to mirror that over. Select the two, go up to mesh and then combine to turn that into one piece, and then we're going to go to edit mesh and then merge to merge those vertices together. So now you can see we have that completed front part of the fin. Now if we need to, we can just go ahead and start bridging these faces to fill in these holes like so. Okay, and then we can just like quickly fix up the topology, one edge going down the middle. Okay, and then okay, and if you're now happy with that shape, we could then just go ahead and bevel everything. You might be wondering why I'm selecting the faces. It's just how I prefer to do it, because then I can convert the selection to edges afterwards. Sometimes it's a bit faster. And then hold down Control, right click, go to edges, and then to edge perimeter, and it's going to select most of the edges that we need. And then we can just go ahead and bevel these. Increase the fraction a bit. Okay, and now if we smooth that, you can see we've got absolutely no pinching whatsoever. We've got a very, very nice piece of clean geometry with those holes in there and nice even topology. And then we could do the exact same thing with this part, you know? If we wanted to start adding these kind of details in here with these creases, you know, first of all, I would go ahead and duplicate this across to the other side, and then we'll go ahead and combine it just like we did earlier with the front piece. Then we'll do edit mesh and merge again to make sure those vertices are together. And then if we want to add these kind of creases here, these folds in the metal or whatever the material would be, we could just flatten out some of these edges and then maybe just bevel them. reduce the fraction a little bit. That then creates the space for us to create that inset. Or then just add an edge in the middle. And then we'll simply just scale it in. And then if we need to, we can just pull these in like that. And then to hold that edge, we'll just put a few more edges there. And there you go. That's one of those creases in there. A bit more extreme than the last one, but you know, you could fix that just by scaling it back out again. So you can see you can very, very quickly add detail. That did not take too much time at all, and we just started from a simple cube. It really did not take that much time at all to get that in, and it's just really all it is start simple, have patience. You make great use of the lattice tool as well. That's amazing. You can see in this video how quickly you can change the shape of things, and it keeps things nice and even. And then you can get to the fun part now. You can just start detailing this because the topology is nice and even. You've got your shape done. All you need to do now is worry about just cutting things in, and you've got a backup to work with as well, just in case you need to go back. So yeah, I hope this video has been helpful. I hope this has maybe given you some more confidence in being able to build things like this. You know, this is just one small part of the plane, but if you imagine this was a wing, you'd have a lot of the wing done already. You just need to add the details now. The actual curved part is done. And the thing I want to emphasize, as I said in other videos, is add more density if you need it. If you need to add a bunch of details on a very, very like sharp or intense curve like this, where it bends around 180 degrees, then you might need more divisions. Maybe I'll just move this like a couple more times like this, right? Just because you're going to need it. But if you don't, then keep it a bit more light. And yeah, the most important takeaway from this, if anything, is just start simple, block out, take your time, be patient, and don't be afraid. I've mentioned in other videos as well, if you do need to, just take a print screen of this. Put it into Paint, Photoshop, whatever tool you like to use for drawing, or print it out even if you want to, and then just draw over the top of it with a pencil or marker. And draw the topology as you need it. You know, that helps quite a lot sometimes if you're worried about how to plan these things out. But I guarantee if you start simple and work in this same way, you can basically model anything. A lot of the hardest part really is just, I see a lot of beginners just start way too complicated. They throw way too many polygons at something, and then it gets lumpy and they don't know how to progress. So yeah, I hope that's been helpful. Thank you very much for watching. Any questions at all, please do put those in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.